Hey everyone, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the need to prove yourself, to justify who you are, to convince people that you're good enough, strong enough, smart enough? From the moment we take our first steps into the world, we are conditioned to seek approval. As children, we look to our parents for reassurance, to our teachers for validation, and to our peers for acceptance. We learn that applause means success, that recognition means we are worthy, and that to be seen and acknowledged is to matter. And so we grow up carrying this invisible scorecard, measuring our worth by the reactions we receive from others. It starts small: a good grade, a word of praise, a pat on the back. These things tell us we are on the right track. But as we move through life, the stakes get higher. Our achievements are no longer just for ourselves. They become performances, judged by the world around us. We chase promotions, awards, and social media likes, each moment of validation giving us a fleeting sense of worth. Yet, no matter how much we achieve, the feeling never seems to last. There is always another level, another benchmark, another person to impress, and in this relentless pursuit, we lose something invaluable: our sense of self. The problem with seeking validation is that it places our self-worth in the hands of others. It makes us dependent on external approval, leaving us vulnerable to rejection and criticism. When we live for validation, our decisions become shaped by what others expect, rather than what we truly want. We hesitate to take risks because failure might tarnish our image. We say yes to things we don't believe in because we fear disapproval. We mold ourselves into versions that fit other people's expectations, slowly drifting further away from who we really are. But what is the cost of this endless chase? It is exhaustion, an emotional and mental fatigue that comes from constantly proving ourselves. It is anxiety, the fear that we might not measure up, that we might fall short in the eyes of others. It is insecurity, the lingering doubt that no matter what we do, it will never be enough. And perhaps worst of all, it is the loss of authenticity. When we spend our lives seeking approval, we start living for an audience instead of for ourselves. Think about the people who inspire you the most, the ones who stand out, who leave a lasting impact. Are they the ones who constantly explain themselves, the ones who seek validation at every turn, or are they the ones who simply live, unapologetically and with purpose? The people who don't chase approval are often the ones who command the most respect, not because they don't care about others, but because they trust their own worth. They understand that validation is fleeting, but self-respect is permanent. Breaking free from this cycle is not easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning. It means being okay with not always being understood, with not always being liked. It means realizing that rejection is not a reflection of our worth, but rather a sign that we are not meant for everyone. And most importantly, it means redefining success, not as something measured by applause, but as something felt within. True fulfillment doesn't come from proving ourselves to others. It comes from knowing ourselves. It comes from being at peace with who we are, regardless of whether the world approves. The moment we stop chasing validation, we gain something far more valuable: freedom. The freedom to make choices that align with our values. The freedom to embrace failure without shame. The freedom to be unapologetically ourselves. So, the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause. Ask yourself, who am I doing this for? If the answer is anyone but yourself, There is a distinct difference between confidence that is built on external validation and confidence that comes from within. The former is fragile, dependent on praise, approval, and recognition from others. It fluctuates based on circumstances, rising when we receive validation and crumbling when we face criticism. The latter, however, is unshakable. It is rooted in self-awareness, in a deep understanding of our worth that exists regardless of how the world perceives us. True confidence is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about knowing who you are and standing firm in that knowledge. When we rely on external validation to feel confident, we place our self-worth in the hands of others. A compliment makes us feel good, but a single criticism can undo it all. We become dependent on approval, seeking constant reassurance to feel worthy. This cycle is exhausting because it is impossible to control how others see us. People's opinions are unpredictable, shaped by their own experiences, biases, and expectations. No matter how much we try to please everyone, there will always be someone who disapproves. And if our confidence is tied to their approval, we will always feel like we are walking on unstable ground. On the other hand, when we know our own value, we no longer need permission to feel confident. We no longer need constant reassurance to believe in ourselves. This kind of confidence does not mean arrogance. It is not about thinking we are better than others. It is about knowing that we are enough, just as we are. It is about trusting in our abilities, recognizing our strengths, and accepting our flaws without shame. It is about understanding that we have something to offer, regardless of whether others acknowledge it or not. There is great power in this kind of self-assurance. It allows us to take risks without fear of failure because we are not seeking validation in success alone. It allows us to set boundaries without guilt because we no longer feel the need to please everyone. It allows us to handle criticism with grace because we know that our worth is not defined by someone else's opinion. When we stop relying on external validation, we free ourselves from the exhausting need to constantly prove something. We become more focused, more at peace, and more in control of our own happiness. But how do we develop this kind of confidence? It starts with self-awarenesses. Knowing your value requires deep reflection, an honest assessment of who you are beyond titles, achievements, or social status. It means recognizing your strengths without waiting for someone else to point them out. It also means acknowledging your weaknesses without letting them define you. True confidence is built on self-acceptance, on the understanding that imperfections do not make you unworthy, they make you human. It also requires a shift in perspective. Instead of measuring your worth based on external success, ask yourself what truly matters to you. What kind of person do you want to be? What values do you want to uphold? When your confidence is rooted in your principles rather than in the approval of others, you become unshakable. You no longer need validation to feel worthy because your sense of self is not dependent on external factors. There is a profound freedom in reaching this state of confidence. You begin to speak with conviction, not because you need to prove yourself, but because you believe in what you say. You begin to take action, not because you seek recognition, but because you trust in your ability to make an impact. You begin to embrace who you are, not because others approve, but because you have given yourself permission to be enough. True confidence does not demand attention. It does not beg for approval. It simply exists. And when you know your own value, the world will see it too, not because you ask them to, but because self-assurance is undeniable. From an early age, we are taught to seek approval. We learn that being liked, accepted, and praised means we are on the right track. We shape our behavior to fit expectations, those of our parents, teachers, friends, and later colleagues, bosses, and society at large. We chase the feeling of being admired, of being seen as successful, competent, or worthy. But in this relentless pursuit, we often forget to ask ourselves a simple yet profound question. Who are we really trying to impress? Most people spend a significant part of their lives performing, consciously or unconsciously adjusting their words, actions, and even personalities to fit the image they think others want to see. We choose careers based on prestige rather than passion. We make life decisions based on what looks good from the outside, rather than what feels right on the inside. We say yes when we want to say no, fearing that rejection will make us seem less likable. In doing so, we become actors in a play we did not write, seeking applause that never truly satisfies. But the truth is, no amount of external validation will ever feel like enough if we are not living in alignment with who we truly are. The approval of others is fleeting. People's opinions shift, trends change, and admiration fades. If our sense of worth is tied to external recognition, we will always be chasing, never arriving. And the price we pay is steep. We trade authenticity for acceptance, joy for approval, and inner peace for external validation. The moment we stop performing for others, we start living for ourselves. This does not mean disregarding people's feelings or becoming indifferent to relationships. It means understanding that our worth is not determined by how many people admire us, but by how honestly we live. It means prioritizing self-respect over external validation. It means being okay with not pleasing everyone, because trying to impress the world often comes at the expense of our own happiness. Letting go of the need to impress others is a process, and it starts with self-awareness. It requires us to question our motivations. Are we pursuing success because it genuinely fulfills us, or because it looks good on paper? Are we dressing, speaking, and acting in ways that feel authentic, or in ways that align with an image we think others expect? When we begin to notice the ways we shape our lives around external approval, we gain the power to break free from it. It also requires courage. The moment we stop seeking to impress, we may face resistance. Some people might not understand our choices. Some may judge us. Some may even distance themselves. But in losing approval from the wrong people, we gain something far more valuable, the freedom to be our true selves. We begin to surround ourselves with those who appreciate us for who we are, not for the version we felt pressured to present. Living authentically does not mean we will never face doubt or insecurity, but when we let go of the need to impress, we start making choices from a place of self-trust rather than fear. We begin to measure success not by applause, but by the depth of our fulfillment. We start valuing the quiet confidence of knowing we are enough, even when no one is watching. At the end of the day, the people who truly matter in our lives are not the ones we have to impress. They're the ones who see us, accept us, and respect us without conditions. And perhaps more importantly, the most important person to impress has always been ourselves. When we live in alignment with who we are, when we make decisions that feel right in our hearts rather than impressive to the world, we stop chasing approval and start experiencing real freedom. There is an unspoken pressure in life to constantly justify ourselves, to explain our choices, to defend our beliefs, to prove our worth. Whether it's the career path we take, the way we live our lives, or the decisions we make, we often feel the need to provide explanations, as if seeking permission or approval. This need to justify ourselves can be exhausting, especially when faced with people who will never truly understand or accept our reasons. But the truth is, not all battles are worth fighting, and not every decision requires validation from others. One of the biggest myths we are taught is that we owe everyone an explanation. We feel compelled to justify why we turned down an opportunity, why we changed directions, why we walked away from a relationship, why we think the way we do. But in reality, most of these justifications are unnecessary. The people who truly respect us don't need constant explanations, and the people who demand them are often not interested in understanding us. They just want to challenge, criticize, or control. Every time we explain ourselves to someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart, we are engaging in a battle that drains our energy. We defend our choices against people who have already made up their minds about us. We try to prove ourselves to those who will never be satisfied. And in doing so, we give away our power. There is a great sense of freedom in realizing that we do not need to justify every aspect of our lives. We do not need to explain why we choose peace over drama, why we walk away from toxic relationships, or why we prioritize our own well-being. Some people will not understand, and that is okay. Their lack of understanding does not diminish the validity of our decisions. The need for constant justification often comes from a fear of judgment. We worry about being misunderstood, about seeming selfish, about disappointing others. But no matter how much we explain, there will always be people who see what they want to see. We cannot control how others perceive us, but we can control whether or not we let their opinions dictate our actions. Choosing not to justify every decision does not mean we are avoiding accountability. It means we recognize that our time and energy are valuable and that some explanations are simply unnecessary. It means understanding that peace is sometimes more important than being right. It means learning to walk away from arguments that serve no purpose, from conversations that drain us, and from people who only seek to debate rather than understand. Life becomes much lighter when we stop feeling the need to defend every choice. When we make decisions based on our own values rather than external approval, we gain confidence in ourselves. We learn that validation is not a requirement for living a fulfilling life. We start choosing our battles wisely, focusing on the ones that truly matter rather than trying to win over every doubter we encounter. At the end of the day, our lives are ours to live. We do not need permission to follow our own path. We do not need to justify our choices to people who will never walk in our shoes. And we certainly do not need to waste our energy trying to convince those who are unwilling to see our perspective. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Not because we have nothing to say, but because we know we do not need to say it. There is a common belief that to be seen, heard, or respected, we must always speak up, defend ourselves, or prove our worth. Society often glorifies those who are loud, outspoken, and constantly asserting their achievements. But in reality, true strength and confidence do not always come from words. Sometimes silence is more powerful than any speech, and presence speaks louder than any argument. When we truly understand our own worth, we realize that we do not need to constantly explain, defend, or prove our greatness, because our actions will do that for us. In a world filled with noise, silence is often misunderstood as weakness. People assume that if someone is not arguing, not proving their point, or not demanding attention, they must not be confident or capable. But the opposite is often true. Those who are truly secure in themselves do not need to seek validation through words. They do not need to announce their greatness or defend every criticism. They simply embody who they are through their actions, their character, and their consistency. Consider the people who leave a lasting impact, not because they talk the most, but because their presence commands respect. They do not need to convince anyone of their abilities because they let their work speak for itself. They do not waste time arguing with those who misunderstand them because they know that actions will reveal the truth over time. They do not boast about their strengths because real confidence does not need an audience. These are the people who understand that silence is not emptiness, it is power. There is also wisdom in knowing when words are unnecessary. Many people feel the need to explain themselves in every situation, to prove that they are right, or to defend themselves against unfair criticism. But not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opinion deserves a response. When we argue with those who are not willing to understand, we waste our energy. When we over-explain our decisions to people who will never be satisfied, we diminish our own confidence. And when we try too hard to prove our worth, we often come across as seeking approval rather than standing firm in who we are. Silence also creates mystery and intrigue. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who does not feel the need to fill every silence with words. It makes people pay closer attention when they do speak. It allows them to observe, listen, and understand more than those who are always talking. And it ensures that when they do choose to speak, their words carry greater weight. Moreover, silence is a form of discipline. It takes restraint not to respond to negativity, not to react emotionally to criticism, and not to engage in meaningless debates. It requires a deep understanding of one's own worth to know that words are not always necessary. There are moments in life when silence is the strongest statement we can make. When walking away speaks louder than arguing, when refusing to engage shows more strength than reacting, and when choosing peace over noise demonstrates more confidence than proving a point. Actions will always reveal more about a person than words ever could. A person who is truly great does not need to say it. Their work, their integrity, and their consistency will show it. A person who is truly wise does not need to announce it. Their understanding, their patience, and their ability to listen will prove it. And a person who is truly strong does not need to argue about it. Their resilience, their calmness, and their ability to rise above pettiness will make it clear. The most powerful people are not the ones who speak the most, but the ones who know when words are unnecessary. Sometimes silence is the best answer. Sometimes walking away is the strongest move. And sometimes simply being who you are, without needing to explain or prove anything, is the loudest statement you can make. The desire for approval is deeply ingrained in human nature. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek validation from parents, teachers, peers, and eventually from society as a whole. We learn that praise means we are on the right path and that being accepted equates to being worthy. Over time, this need for approval becomes a silent force, shaping our decisions, dictating our ambitions, and influencing how we present ourselves to the world. But beneath the temporary satisfaction of validation lies a hidden cost, one that drains our energy, stifles our creativity, and erodes our authenticity. One of the biggest costs of seeking approval is the immense mental and emotional energy it requires. When we live for the opinions of others, we are constantly on edge, analyzing every decision through the lens of external validation. We overthink our words, our actions, and even our choices in fear of judgment. Every interaction becomes a performance, and every mistake feels like a failure, not just of action, but of self-worth. This continuous cycle of proving ourselves is exhausting because it places our sense of self in the hands of others, making our confidence fragile and easily shattered by criticism or rejection. Beyond draining our energy, the need for approval stifles creativity. True creativity comes from a place of freedom. Freedom to explore, to take risks, to express without fear. But when we are overly concerned with how our work will be received, we begin to censor ourselves. We hesitate to share bold ideas because they might not be accepted. We modify our originality to fit into a mold that pleases the majority. Over time, this results in safe, predictable, and uninspired work because we are no longer creating for ourselves. We are creating for approval. The greatest innovators, artists, and thinkers are those who have dared to create despite criticism, knowing that true creativity cannot thrive under the weight of constant validation. Perhaps the most damaging cost of seeking approval is the loss of authenticity. When we prioritize being liked over being true to ourselves, we slowly chip away at our own identity. We suppress parts of who we are to fit into expectations. We say yes when we mean no. We pursue careers, relationships, and lifestyles that look good on the outside but feel hollow within. The more we shape ourselves around what others want, the further we drift from what we truly desire. And eventually, we may wake up one day and realize that we no longer recognize ourselves. Not because we have changed for the better, but because we have become a collection of what we thought others wanted us to be. Letting go of the need for approval does not mean disregarding other people's feelings or perspectives. It means understanding that external validation should not be the foundation of our self-worth. It means recognizing that not everyone will understand or appreciate us, and that is okay. The most important approval we can ever seek is our own. The deep, unwavering belief that we are enough as we are, without the constant need for applause. When we stop living for approval, we regain our energy. We shift our focus from performing to simply being. We free ourselves to create without fear, to express without hesitation, and to make decisions based on what truly aligns with our values. Most importantly, we reclaim our authenticity, living in a way that feels true to who we are rather than who we think we should be. At the end of the day, the pursuit of approval is a race with no finish line. No matter how much we achieve or how many people we please, there will always be new expectations, new critics, and new standards to meet. The only way to truly be at peace is to step away from the chase and trust that our worth is not something that needs to be proven. It is something that simply exists. In a world that constantly pressures us to prove our worth, it can feel tempting to shout our achievements, explain our value, and fight for recognition. We live in an era where visibility is equated with success, where being seen and acknowledged feels like validation. But the truth is, the right people, the ones who truly matter, will recognize your value without you having to constantly announce it. Genuine worth does not require excessive explanation, and true recognition does not need to be demanded. When you focus on being your authentic self, those who are meant to see you will see you. One of the most exhausting struggles in life is trying to be noticed by the wrong people. We chase validation from those who are indifferent to us, hoping that if we work harder, prove ourselves more, or say the right things, they will finally acknowledge our worth. But no matter how much effort we put in, there will always be people who choose not to see us, not because we are lacking, but because they are not meant to be part of our journey. Seeking validation from those who will never truly appreciate us only leads to frustration, self-doubt, and unnecessary exhaustion. On the other hand, when we shift our energy away from seeking approval and instead focus on being our best selves, the right people naturally recognize us. These are the people who see our potential even before we fully see it ourselves. They appreciate our work, our character, and our presence, not because we convince them to, but because they resonate with who we truly are. The right people do not need us to prove anything. They simply recognize what we bring to the table. This applies to every area of life, whether in friendships, relationships, careers, or creative pursuits. In friendships, the right people will value your presence without you needing to perform or impress. In relationships, the right partner will appreciate you for who you are, not for how much effort you put into convincing them of your worth. In your career, the right opportunities will come when you focus on doing great work rather than chasing superficial recognition. The best professional environments do not require constant self-promotion. They reward consistency, skill, and integrity. The right people notice those who stay true to their path rather than those who are the loudest in the room. A major part of trusting that the right people will see you is learning to let go of the need for universal approval. Not everyone is meant to understand you, and not everyone will appreciate your value. That does not make you any less worthy. It simply means you are not meant for everyone. Trying to gain the approval of people who do not align with your values or vision is like speaking a language they do not understand. Instead of forcing recognition, it is better to focus on refining your craft, strengthening your character, and continuing on your path with confidence. It is also important to recognize that true value is often seen in quiet consistency rather than in loud declarations. Those who constantly feel the need to prove themselves often do so out of insecurity, while those who are secure in their worth allow their actions to speak for them. The most respected and admired individuals are rarely the ones demanding attention. They are the ones who simply do great work, show up with integrity, and let time reveal their worth. When you trust that the right people will see you, you free yourself from the exhausting need to chase validation. You start living for yourself rather than for the approval of others. You focus on creating, growing, and contributing rather than seeking constant recognition. And in doing so, you naturally attract the right people, those who recognize your worth not because you demanded it, but because it was undeniable. At the end of the day, true recognition is not about how loudly you announce your worth, but about how authentically you live it. When you remain true to yourself, put in the work, and move forward with quiet confidence, the right people will always see you, and their recognition will mean more than any applause you had to beg for. There is a kind of power that comes not from control, but from release. We often associate strength with holding on to relationships, to expectations, to the need to prove ourselves. We believe that persistence is the key to success, that fighting every battle is necessary, that staying in situations longer will somehow validate our worth. But true freedom comes not from gripping tightly, but from knowing when to let go. The real power lies in understanding when to walk away, when to speak up, and when to simply be. Letting go is not about giving up, it is about recognizing when something no longer serves us. We stay in relationships, jobs, and circumstances that drain us because we fear what will happen if we leave. We hold on to outdated beliefs and unnecessary battles because we feel obligated to prove something. But in reality, the strongest people are not those who endure everything. They are the ones who know when to release what is holding them back. Walking away is sometimes the bravest thing we can do. It takes courage to step away from a toxic relationship, to leave a situation where we are not valued, or to release a version of ourselves that no longer aligns with who we are becoming. The freedom that comes from letting go is not just about physical separation, it is about emotional liberation. It is the moment we stop seeking approval, stop explaining ourselves to those who will never understand, and stop forcing what was never meant to fit. At the same time, letting go does not mean we stay silent when our voice matters. There are moments in life when we must speak up, not to prove a point, but to stand firm in our truth. Silence can be powerful, but so can clarity and conviction. Knowing when to use our voice is a form of wisdom. It is about choosing which battles deserve our energy and which are distractions. Some arguments are pointless, fueled by ego rather than progress. But there are times when speaking up is necessary, when our values are at stake, when someone needs to hear the truth, when we must stand up for ourselves or others. The key is discernment, understanding that not every situation requires a response, but when it does, our words should come from a place of strength, not desperation. And then, there are moments when the greatest power is in simply being. In a world that demands constant movement, constant proving, constant explanation, choosing stillness is an act of defiance. Being does not mean inaction. It means embracing the present without the need to force or control. It is trusting that we do not have to chase every opportunity, respond to every criticism, or force every outcome. There is a deep kind of freedom in knowing that we are enough, that our presence itself carries weight, and that we do not need to constantly prove our worth to be valuable. When we learn to let go, we reclaim our energy. We stop wasting time on people who do not appreciate us, on fights that do not matter, on proving ourselves to those who will never be satisfied. We gain clarity, focusing only on what truly aligns with our purpose and values. We begin to trust ourselves more, no longer seeking external validation to feel whole. Letting go is not about loss. It is about creating space. Space for better relationships, for new opportunities, for personal peace. At the end of the day, the most powerful people are not the ones who hold on the longest, argue the loudest, or fight the hardest. They are the ones who know when to walk away, when to speak up, and when to simply be. Freedom is not found in control, it is found in surrender. And the moment we embrace that truth, we step into a life that is lighter, stronger, and truly our own. True power comes from knowing your worth without seeking constant validation. The right people will see you without you having to prove yourself. Letting go of unnecessary battles, approval-seeking, and toxic attachments frees your energy and authenticity. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and walking away is the strongest move. In the end, you don't have to prove your greatness. Just live it. The world will always have expectations. People will always have opinions. But your greatest power lies in knowing who you are without needing the world to confirm it. So the next time someone demands you prove yourself, remember this: you already have, just by being you.